Hi, good morning. I also had a presentation. Not sure who's queuing them up. While it's getting queued up, my name is Kim Novick. I am a biometeorologist. Kind of a funny word, but it means I study interactions between ecosystems and the atmosphere. And I have a particular expertise in the carbon benefits of eastern U.S. forests. So I am very grateful for the opportunity today to share just a little bit of what we've learned. Let's go ahead to the next slide. Well, while we're bringing it back up, I think I remember what the next slide said, and there's really just three. First is that the forests of the eastern United States, including south central Indiana, are relatively strong carbon sinks. The second point I want to make is that they have additional climate benefits related to cool the surface and the air, particularly when compared to nearby grasslands. And that third, southern Indiana is a good place for forest carbon credit programs. Okay, so these are the three takeaways. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So since 1998, Indiana University scientists have been monitoring the movement, what we call the flux of carbon dioxide between the ecosystem and about an 85-year-old now tract of forest in Morgan Monroe State Forest. I'll spare you the details of how this methodology works, but basically we have some fancy gas analyzers and wind sensors on this top of this 150-foot tower that allow us to constantly measure the movement of carbon dioxide between the atmosphere and the ecosystem. And during the daytime, it's downwards in the summer as plants are sequestering CO2 through photosynthesis. And then at night and in the winter, it's a positive flux from respiration. But on balance, when averaged over the course of a day and a year, the forest is always an annual carbon sink. The figure you see here are about 20 years, the first 20 years of data from the tower. There's some variability from year to year depending on when the growing season started and whether or not we had a drought. But in general, it's fairly stable. This forest sequesters about 300 grams carbon per meter squared per year. That's 1,100 grams. Choice today is metric tons of CO2, so that's about 4 metric tons of CO2 on average, in some years substantially higher. This is the only tower like this over a forest in south central Indiana, but there is a fairly large network of towers like this across the entire United States. Next slide. And when we leverage data from towers like that, well, down here on my screen, I'm right over what I want you to be seeing, so I'll just have to tell you what it says. But when we can combine information from the ground with information from satellites, thank you, we can get an estimate of the carbon flux of the entire continental United States. One such estimate published. And a main point here is that I think if you press click, we'll get a little bit of animation. Eastern U.S. ecosystems give us a substantial discount on our anthropogenic emissions of CO2. Maybe a couple of clicks will bring up the rest of that. Our forests sequester 40 to 60% of the CO2 that we emit into the atmosphere from fossil fuel burning. Without forests and croplands, climate would be changing substantially faster. They really do offer us a tremendous carbon benefit compared to the case, for example, of a grassland, which tends to be carbon neutral. All right, a couple more clicks should get us to the next slide. All right. Finally, I wanted to mention that forests keep us cool. Forests evaporate a lot of water, and just like in the summer when we sweat, that is a cooling process. When forests evaporate water, they tend to cool the surface and also the near surface air temperature, right? So sustaining forests and allowing forests to regrow where they once were is an effective way to adapt to climate change. It gives us another tool for mitigating rising temperatures, particularly during the growing season when we need that cooling effect the most. This figure on the left just shows that compared to nearby grasslands, forests during the middle of the day in the summer are about 4 to 5 degrees Celsius cooler at the top, at the surface, which is a fairly substantial cooling benefit. Next slide. And then the final point is just that, not everywhere is a great place for forest carbon trading programs, especially when possible to lose your entire forested ecosystem in a matter of days due to a fire. But this here in the eastern United States is a good place for forest carbon trading programs. Forests are the natural ecosystem here. This is a map published by the Chief of the Forest Service in 1925 showing the area of forest in the 17th century. If you are tired of mowing your lawn and you simply stop, within 10 or 20 years, you'll have something approximating a forest. The easiest way to grow a forest, if not necessarily the best way in southern Indiana, is to do nothing at all. Also, our forests are quite diverse. This is a brochure put out by the DNR that identifies 23 common species in Indiana's state parks and state forests. And because we have such diversity, that means our forests are buffered from impacts from climate extremes or insect outbreaks, which usually tend to affect just one or two species. Okay. So I think that's all on the last slide. I do just want to acknowledge our sources of funding. And I am grateful to the Indiana Department of Natural Resources for allowing us to operate the Flux Tower in Morgan Monroe. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kim, very much. Appreciate it. Questions from committee? I see none. Kim, thank you.